Welcome to Ego NetCast. I am Martin Lindeskog. So, I'm catching up a bit now after a so-called man cold. So, 70 plus episodes, I'm back on track. And recently, I did 100 episode milestone number 100 together with Johan Gustafsson of Produktivitet, to be productive and drinking tea. And then if you include another podcast called Pen Meets Paper in Swedish, Penna möter papper, we've done about 30 episodes, and of Produktivitet we had made 70. So then it's 100. And now here on Ego Netcast that I started in 2006, I'm on episode 70 also. So it's adding up. So I will pat myself on the back here and give myself an applaud. That's included here as a default sound on Boss Jock, and now it's called Backpack Studio. So, I have to find the workflow here for these podcast solo episodes. And now it's early in the morning. So I'm sitting here at my home studio and talking into this box with material that's good for the sound, and this iRig mic in my smartphone, iPhone, and then using this Backpack Studio application. And then I have my notes on my iPad, so I have to look up a bit here because it's standing on the box, and I'm using Ulysses. So that's my tools here. And as you hear, I'm still having a bit man cold, but I'm back here. And you could see it takes some of your energy when you're feeling a bit under the weather. Or as we say in Swedish, under isen, under the ice. And recently it was the World Radio Day, November 13th. And now when I have back my voice, so to speak, I could say that I have a message spread as this podcast documentary, The Messengers, that I supported. So I will do a bit of meta podcasting, talking about the podcasting industry and how to start a podcast, how to continue with the podcast, and how to develop a podcast. And as a social media evangelist, why I'm, could say, focused and specialized in this field. I'm involved in one way or another. It's about 10 different podcasts. So I like this medium, and we'll continue with it. So, as you know, I've been struggling with it, but I will not giving up. I will keep going on it. And I think I found a way now with these solo episodes. And also my plan, excuse me, my plan is to have an interview or conversation of sort once a month. And that's the realistic goal here, to do that once a month. Maybe later on it could be every 2 weeks. So, what more? And on this World Radio Day, it was a special offer from Hindenburg. I bought it for $1, symbolic dollar there, and I haven't looked so much into it, but I know others are a fan of it. For example, Dr. P.O. On Twitter, of logistics podcast on logistics.rock, and also together with Lena Göthberg of Shipping Podcast, they are doing a meta podcast on podcasting in Swedish called Podgeek. So, and he also have a logistics podcast in Swedish, Logistikpodden. He is using Hindenburg, and it's used for journalists in mind, and also podcasters and so on. So my thing is to do it easy, simple, and get the good quality for what you put into. And I'm welcoming your feedback. What do you think about sound? I'm looking forward to find some additional microphones in the future, and it will be interesting to follow here Backpack Studio, how I will develop it, how you could maybe add more microphones and other things like that. And we'll come into this also. This will be a bit longer episodes. Usually I want to have around 5 minutes. It's that it is now, between 5 and 10 minutes, but maybe it will be a bit longer because I'm catching up. So we'll talk about the easy way to start a podcast. When I started in 2006, I had a friend there called Prodos that created everything and did the technical stuff, and I showed up, so to speak, in Sweden and in America, and we recorded through a phone line, and it worked fine. And then later on he wanted to start a network of podcasters there, interested in a specific philosophy called objectivism. So that's the background for that, and I enjoyed starting there. And then Prodos had some technical difficulties and others. I had to take a pause of this network, Vox. So I searched on the net, and then I found Blog Talk Radio. And there you had this live feature. Everything was set up. It was a network, so they were promoting your pod throughout the network. And that had been a good way. What I found out was, of course, with the sound quality, that some of the procasters and experienced podcasters said that they had an issue with that. But it was a good network, and still is. Now it's included in Voxnet, I think it's called. So there have been some mergers during time here in history, and we'll come back to that with podcasting players popping up. And you could say one idea of a podcast network in some sort of way is it a market for it? Could we earn some money, or are we in it like a community, you could say? But still you could earn money if you think about how to use this kind of media platform, channel, what do you call it? And there you have some different schools, you could say. So some of them that have been around for a long time, like Lyceum, that I'm a loyal customer to, they have, everything is cost money, but you could start out as little as $5. Adding a couple of dollars, you have some basic stats that you could check your podcasting with downloads, unique downloads, and other data there. But there have been some free services during the years also, coming and going. And we will come here and talk about that. As a podcaster, it's been lots of buzz here. And I will come back to my scheduling also. It's with the new Chinese New Year, the year of a pig, Earth Pig here. So I could say that as a note and take care of that. That this new year, around this time now, end of February, beginning March, this is the new year and the start and a fresh start. So I will include some show notes about the new year, the Chinese New Year, the Persian New Year. So back to anchor material. That's what I'm working on with my tea site, and also a new podcast on tea, The Perfect Cup. I done a pilot episode, and now I will drink some tea here, morning tea. And it's free, it's easy to start with it. But then it have been some debate about the terms of services. Do you own your material? What are they really doing with the feed, the RSS feed? And what could happen in the future? But we have seen other platforms like that, Audio Boo, that then became Audio Boom, And they have some pressure because they were on the London exchange, so they had to earn money also. And I liked the service. I did a podcast with Lotta Gerges Aston called TrendPal, and we used their free service. For 10 minutes we talked about crowdfunding, some technical tech app, and also how to be, you could say, off-grid and or be analog also, mindfulness. So we did all these elements in 10 minutes, and we did that for some time, and I enjoyed it very much. So there you have a free service, but the basic service. Excuse me. And now they have restarted, you could say, recharged themselves, and now you have to buy a package in one way or another. So I think it starts maybe around now $10 or something like that to start, or €10 or £10. Maybe it's less. So they have learned from that so-called TANSTALF acronym. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. So you can't do it for free. But of course you could become a product. The user could become a product. And then I'm now thinking of you, Google. I'm a fan of Google search and others. But you could start wondering what kind of data do they have. But I'm all for it as long as they use it in a good way. And maybe that could be a question, that why Google is not on the podcasting industry yet. Of course, yeah, they are, and you could search. They have talked about podcast player, but it's not the default player on the Android phone. I'm as you know, Apple fanboy, so to speak. I'm used all the different computer systems and so on, and now I'm using Apple. And I like, as I could do now, you do recording simply on my smartphone, getting good quality, and it's integrated in a good way. And also I could listen to Podcaster app, that's standard default app on my phone. It hasn't been the best podcast app during the time or history, but it developed and it's a good start. And then you could search for some other iPhone apps. For example, Overcast, that's a great app. It's developed in a very good way. And then, of course, you could have your own standalone app. If you're a Lyceum customer, you could get your own app. And that's my recommendation for my clients, to have their own app, because then you will stand out and you will make it very easy for the listeners to also, if they don't know how to use RSS, so-called iTunes, what it was called before, now Apple Podcast, how to download an app, how to subscribe to an app, and so on. Then you could search on the Apple Podcast App Store and Google Play and find it for free. So that's a good thing. So coming back to this, for free or have a premium model, I will include some articles in this great online magazine, the Podcast Business Journal. There you have one by Dave Jackson. He has a beef with Anchor. Anyway, I have it with the terms of service, and that maybe they are not so upfront with it, but others say they are. Like my good friend Eileen Smith. They've been an avid Anchor user. She says, why not start with it? And then you could find some other thing later on. And that's what I have done also. So I've used Audio Boom, for example. So why don't use Anchor and then test, because it's easy. I will not recommend it as the first choice to my clients. So then I will recommend like a service like Lyceum or some other that you could find there, Blueberry and others. But Lyceum is my first pick. But you could start out with Anchor. You could do it as a test, like Dave Jackson did himself. He used a so-called fake podcast show in order to test and see how they are using the data and so on. So they are making it easy for a new podcast, a newbie, to start a podcast. But they're also gathering data and information and mix it up in a way, you could say. And that's the question and the debate, if they are doing it in a so-called fair way. But yeah, as I said, market will decide. And now they are owned by Spotify. And I will include also Daniel E. Lewis' article there, also in Podcast Business Journal. What's the deal with that? They bought also Gimlet, that is podcast creating great stories and series in podcasting, been like almost like a factory in podcasting, spitting out great shows. So then now Spotify is also a content creator, and Spotify have jumped up as the number. We talked about the default podcast player, and Spotify is now number 2 for Android users, but you could use it on iPhone also. It was not meant to. Spotify is not meant to be using podcasting in the first place. It's music, of course. So when we started the podcast player, it was not so. It didn't have all the features, like, for example, you could boost or you could speed up. My voice is pretty low, and you could also trying to talk slowly and clearly. But if you want to speed up things, and if you are in a rush or want to consume it in a shorter period, then you could speed up the speed for like 1.5 or even 2, and when it will end quicker. And Spotify didn't have it at first, and now they have it, but it's, yeah, you have to go through some steps in order to do it, because you don't speed up the music when you're listening. Maybe you could do some other things with music. Back in the day, maybe you remember with the vinyl, play it backwards and you get secret messages. So maybe you will do that, or maybe you will get a laugh off or a kick off my podcast episode here. So, yeah. And maybe you get a bit shocked here, so we will gonna have the third default here, sound by Backpack. Now you really waked up, I think. I think this sound is used at soccer games. I will find the other music, or you could say the sound that I bought for the old version of Postjock, and add them also to this system. But we will come back more to this regarding podcast tools. So again, I will have some notes here about the Spotify thing. It's the critical mass. I'm using now Apple Music, and I had an account on Spotify, got an invite there, and then you had it for free, and you had listened to ads, and now you have a premium feature also. So they are been very good at getting this critical mass, getting subscribers and users, and then they could add the premium feature. So maybe that's with Anchor also. They will have it for free, and then when they have the base, they will start with a premium feature, like Audioboom did also. So that could be a way to do it. But then, of course, you could ask, as Jackson asked about that, if they are earning money, maybe they burned money there and was also running out of money. And he has an idea there about 45 months, so it's more than 3 years. If you don't get it, maybe you're have a hard time to survive. But as I said before, it's up to market to decide that. And there you have a question about SoundCloud that I use as a extra destination. I pay a premium account there, so it's about 9-10 euros. So it's adding up my costs here for podcasting, and that's what I want to cover in the future also, and get some kind of partnership, sponsorship, maybe some kind of ads if it's fitting together with my format. and the listeners get something from it. So there you have it with some players. You have Acast, you have other players like Stitcher also have a premium feature and adding ads into the mix. And I mean, Libsyn have that too. You could have a premium account and adding ads that's fitting to the format. So I don't think any players are against ads or sponsorship and so on, but it should be a nice fit and match. That's the thing. So talking about more about the players here. As I said, I'm a big fan of Libsyn, and I have, depending on how you calculate it, but around $150 I am paying, or my clients are paying every month to Libsyn. So I have about 10 different shows that I'm involved in one way or another, and there mostly we have for Libsyn. I had testing some other podcast hosting also. One, for example, was a free one, a Swedish one, but then that also disappeared. So that's what could happen. So you have to think about that for Anchor now. Now I think it's safe in a way with Spotify, but we'll see, wait and see and follow it along. It will be interesting. And other things that will be interesting to follow on is Joakim Jardenberg, en sak idag in Swedish, one thing or one idea per day. And he is using Anchor. And one feature that he liked there is that you could send him a message through Anchor. And you also could clap like this, and giving a thumbs up. And then you could get some kind of indication how popular it is. So that could be a good thing to test. So I want to do more interviews, as I said, once a month, and then I will be very open and transparent with that, because I have a relationship with them. Some I have referral links and affiliate links in order to, if somebody like the service that I'm using and want to support my podcasting and blogging. And I will have an episode of that also, how you could do that in the future. So I will talk to now a new service that I like, and I also have it in pipeline for an interview, Cole of Podchaser. And it's interesting. Again, you could be maybe, when you see it popping up, you could wonder, will this work? So-called the findable issue or problem. Is it any problem to find a podcast to listen to, or is it word of mouth that is working with? And now I have registered an account there and starting searching on one of the categories. That was, by the way, a beef by Jackson also with Anchor. You had only one category you could use. In Apple Podcasts, you have up to 3 categories. As I said, with the categories, some of them are very broad, so it's hard to... it's easy to fit in, but it doesn't get you any specific. But on the other hand, it could be some more categories that they could add, but now it's what they have set up, so we have to live with that. But now you could have like 3 categories. So like this podcast, Ego NetCast, it's philosophy, main one, first category, and then it's society and culture, I think. And then you could search on Podchaser with different ones. And I will do a call to action there. I've included now a badge on egonetcast.com on the support page, but also on the front page. So please click on that badge and rate and review my podcast, and spread the good word, please. So I could come up there in the charts, so to speak. But one thing, when you start searching on the categories, and you could also create different kind of lists, you will find other fellow podcasters that you want to listen to. So that was an aha moment for me, because it's pretty hard to find. Of course, you have this new and noteworthy, but then it's again skewed on this top list with already famous from TV or radio, especially here in Sweden. We have that phenomena that is these celebrities that starting podcasting also, and that's all good. But it's so many podcasts out there. As I say to my clients, everyone has a podcast inside them and a book. And I'm good at helping them to start a podcast and continue with podcasting and then develop the podcast. So I know one thing or two about this industry and this social media way of doing stuff with creating audio content. And now I see that I've been babbling here for almost half an hour, so we'll start wrapping up here. But as I said, Podchaser, we'll look into more of that in the near future. Backpack Studio, I want to talk to this guy behind that, because it's a great development of this Postjock app now to new levels. And also Alitu, that I'm using for post-production. Colin, that I interviewed in a previous episode here. Colin Gray, so I want to talk to him regarding this tool, and also Ringer, to have a follow-up talk with Tim Sinclair or somebody else at Ringer. So I'm fan of that for long distance interviews and conversations, and also with co-hosts. It's a great tool to use, and I want to spread the good word about these services also. So, and a new one that popped up here that followed me on Twitter, and then I follow them back, is Podchaser, like Odyssey, but Podchaser. And I will do a shout out to them, Podchaser, and I will do a link here. And if you search for my username, Lyceum, you could then add me, and I will start checking out this tool and app more. And it's also like this discoverability, how you could find new great shows, how you could do some kind of echoing. They have that similar to Anchor clapping, but then you could echo an episode and spread the good word about that. So we'll see how these different new apps and services are playing out. So, and also I could say that I got again here an email from, it's looked a bit standard format that what a great podcast you have. We have a guy here that could be a great guest on your show. But as I said, I'm look at it from the positive way and the benefit of doubt. So I will check him out, and then we'll see if it fits for my podcast. And I use this service podcastguest.com in the past, and backed and booked several guests there for a long time, and I enjoy that in a way. And I have had interviews that I would never have anyway if I haven't used that service. Now I will start to, as I said, interview people who are in the industry, and also follow up interviews and conversation, and also my interest in this first main category, in the philosophy category. So I will interview individuals that are expert in this field. So with that, almost half an hour this time. So I hope you enjoyed this. Coming back after man cold and catching up here, and talk to you soon again. I have talks. I will talk about my favorite team there, the Pats, New England Patriots. I have lots of things in the pipeline. So stick around and talk to you soon again. Cheers.